Imagine for a second that you are like just walking through a public park.
Okay.
You've got your headphones on, you're minding your own business, just completely wrapped up in your own thoughts. And whether you realize it or not, you have cast this invisible protective bubble around yourself.
Right. It's that psychological shield we all put up.
Exactly. When we're navigating a shared, crowded space, we need it.
It's an unspoken social contract, really. The basic understanding of, I will leave you alone and you will leave me alone.
Yeah.
That mutual boundary
Mhm.
is quite literally how we manage to survive in densely populated environments without being constantly overwhelmed.
But then, completely out of nowhere, a voice just pierces right through that bubble, uninvited,
The
entitled.
bubble pops.
Right, the bubble pops. And suddenly, you are not just a person taking a walk anymore. You've been pulled into an interaction you never consented to.
It's a very specific kind of violation.
It is. And that jarring, visceral collision between a person just trying to exist and the unwanted intrusion of a stranger, well, that's the exact subject of our deep dive today.
And the source text we have for this is just, it's wild.
It really is. It's an incredibly raw, spoken word style piece of text. It operates almost like a slam poetry piece, and it is provocatively titled, "Debo I, please make me a sandwich."
It's a striking piece of writing to analyze, for sure.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And to be clear for you listening right now, our mission today isn't to debate the universal sociology of gender dynamics or take any political sides.
Right, we're just looking at the text itself.
Exactly. We are simply putting the specific explosive text under the microscope. We want to analyze the fascinating, layered way this author uses language to confront the societal norms they are experiencing in real time.
And from a purely linguistic standpoint, it is unapologetic. It's aggressive.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single syllable in this text feels deliberately chosen by the author to maximize impact and to forcibly reclaim those boundaries that were crossed.
I totally agree. And I actually want to start right with that title because the phrase, "make me a sandwich," is heavily loaded.
Oh yeah, very loaded.
Like anyone who has spent time on the internet knows this is a historically sexist trope. It's an insult used by internet trolls to dismiss a woman's opinion, essentially saying, your thoughts don't matter, your place is serving me.
What's fascinating here is how the author takes that exact weapon and aims it squarely back at the aggressor.
Yes, it feels like a conversational judo flip,
That's a great way to put it.
using the opponent's own momentum against them. But I am genuinely hung up on the spelling here. The author spells it B-O-I.
Right, the boy.
Yeah, if the goal is to confront a threatening, entitled aggressor, why use casual internet slang? Like, BOI feels almost too flippant for such a serious confrontation. How does that specific spelling actually work as a defense mechanism?
Well, the mechanism here is a deliberate linguistic downgrade. You're right that it's internet slang, and that is exactly why it works.
Wait, how so?
Spelling it, B-O-I, strips the target of any perceived adult masculine authority. If the author were to say, "Man, make me a sandwich," the text would still be acknowledging the harasser's status as a grown adult.
Right, someone who holds a certain amount of physical or societal power.
Exactly. But boy is diminutive. It borrows from internet subcultures to describe someone younger, less serious, or inexperienced.
Oh, wow. So it linguistically shrinks the threat in real time?
Precisely. It treats the harasser not as a threatening predator to be feared, but as an annoying, petulant child throwing a tantrum.
That's brilliant.
By reclaiming a specifically sexist phrase and directing it at a boy, the speaker within the text establishes utter defiance from the very first line.
They aren't just ignoring the harassment.
No, they are actively demanding service. The text is constructing a dynamic where the speaker says, you thought you could put me in my place. Well, I am putting you in yours, and your place is serving me.
Which completely shatters the traditional expectation of submission or silence in the face of public aggression. The speaker takes absolute control of the tone.
They really do.
But then the text does something highly unexpected. Like it shifts away from that external confrontation and moves inward.
Yeah, it takes a very introspective turn.
It dives into this deeply existential reflection. The opening lines contemplate what the author calls the alternate me.
Right.
The text reads, "The alternate me, the one that doesn't get to be a Mr. He." And the speaker talks about how chromosomes and hormones made my once egg, my once body, a she.
It's a sudden, almost dizzying pivot.
It really is.
The text just drops the immediate street-level conflict to grapple with the sheer randomness of the biological lottery. The author is acknowledging the microscopic mechanics, the chromosomes, the hormones that assign their sex at birth.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The speaker looks at their own biology almost like a science fiction multiverse scenario.
Yeah, like an alternate timeline.
Exactly. They recognize that there is this alternate timeline where that once egg developed differently and they became a Mr. He. They even note they were, quote, literally once almost a he.
Right.
But instead of wishing they lived in that alternate timeline to escape the harassment they are currently facing, they execute this fierce pivot. They proclaim they are proud to be whatever kind of she I want to be.
The author is mapping out a radical acceptance of the self here.
Yeah.
Through the lens of this piece, the speaker is acutely aware of the biological vulnerability of being placed in a she body because, of how their specific society treats those
Well,
bodies.
it's the external reality of it.
But they emphatically refuse to be defined or limited by those external societal pressures.
And the author immediately connects that biological reality to the physical world around them. They state that because of this body, they have to deal with guys who want to, and this is a quote, just possess me with ugly contradictory.
Ugly contradictory.
Yeah, I tripped over that phrase the first time I read it. Ugly contradictory. It is so clunky.
It is clunky, yeah.
But it feels incredibly deliberate. Like, the speaker views the mere presence of these entitled strangers as a walking contradiction to their own right to simply exist in public.
That clunky, abrasive phrasing mirrors the friction the speaker feels in the real world.
Oh, that makes sense.
The text frames the speaker's mere existence in a female-presenting body as something that constantly invites unwanted attempts at possession. And that abstract biological vulnerability transitions directly into the harsh, pavement-level reality that the poem explores next.
Yeah, it just drops us right into the visceral anatomy of street harassment. And the author's descriptions are painfully specific.
Very specific.
We get the physical violation of, quote, a pinch of an ass, placed right next to the superficially polite, hey girl, how do you do?
Right.
Which is immediately followed by the predatory, can I get down with you?
The text is capturing the psychological whiplash of catcalling perfectly.
Whiplash is the perfect word for it.
The author illustrates how a harasser might violate physical space with the pinch, but then instantly couch that aggression in casual, almost friendly language like, hey girl.
Like they're just saying hello.
Exactly. The text portrays this as a deeply manipulative tactic designed to confuse the target and mask the underlying threat.
But the speaker in the text refuses to be confused. They respond with, pluck of a taboo, what the fuck are you? Do you understand the me?
They're demanding to be seen as a person.
Right, they are demanding to know if the harasser comprehends the actual human being they are talking to, and then they demand, stop being a fucking monkey and no, I'm not your chimpanzee.
Yeah, that line always stands out.
Now, I have to stop and push back on this tactic for a second. Up to this point, the speaker's language feels incredibly sharp, calculated, and deeply observant.
Okay.
But suddenly screaming, you're a monkey, feels like a loss of control. It feels like they lose the high ground and just resort to a schoolyard insult.
I can see why you'd say that.
Like, how does name-calling actually dismantle the harasser's power? It seems counterproductive to the sophisticated argument the author is building.
I understand why it reads that way on the surface. I really do. But we have to look at the specific societal myth the author is trying to dismantle here.
Okay, what myth is that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, in many cultural narratives, street harassment is often rationalized or romanticized as flattery.
Oh, right. The old take it as a compliment thing.
Exactly. It gets brushed off as boys will be boys or framed as a clumsy but ultimately harmless attempt at courtship. What the author is doing with these specific animalistic metaphors is aggressively stripping away any of that romanticization.
So they are refusing to let the interaction be framed as a human romance.
Exactly. By calling the harasser a monkey, who is acting purely on the fact that they are horny, which is a word explicitly used in the text, the author exposes the behavior strictly as a base territorial instinct.
Oh, I see.
The text is making the argument, there is nothing sophisticated, charming, or socially powerful about what you are doing. You are simply an unevolved animal acting on raw impulse.
Wow.
Furthermore, by stating, I'm not your chimpanzee, the speaker absolutely refuses to participate in this primal dynamic.
They elevate themselves out of that metaphorical jungle.
Precisely. Leaving the harasser down in the dirt. It is a calculated removal of the harasser's ego.
Okay, I see it now. It isolates the behavior as completely unevolved, But the text doesn't just write the harasser off as a foolish
Oh
animal.
no, it goes further.
Much further.
Right.
The author clearly views this base instinct as something much darker. The speaker goes on an intense tirade refusing to be a victim, stating, "I don't mate with another place in which men think it's their case to trace who their next victim will overface."
The rhythm of the language there is incredibly dense.
It's so intense. And then they drop a direct, jarring reference to the threat of physical violence, mentioning the, quote, "rape of me not wanting to be involved with your shitful shit." That escalated the stakes of the poem instantly for me.
It forces the reader to confront a highly uncomfortable perspective, which is that everyday casual street harassment exists on the exact same continuum as physical assault.
Right.
Through the author's eyes, the underlying mechanism is identical. It is the unchecked entitlement to another person's body.
Yeah.
The text systematically destroys the defense that catcalling is just a minor public annoyance, framing it instead as a constant simmering threat of violence.
And the way the author rejects the commodification of their body is wild. There's this rhyming sequence that blends dark humor with absolute disgust.
The bacon lines.
Yes. The speaker says, "For I am forsaken, I am not your bacon. I'm not your girl, for your children for the making." I kept coming back to that phrase, "I am not your bacon."
It's very evocative.
Because bacon isn't just food. Bacon is an entity that has been entirely stripped of its own agency. It has no voice, no life of its own. Its literal only purpose for existing is to be prepared on a butcher's block to provide momentary pleasure to the person consuming it.
That is the precise mechanism of the metaphor. The text suggests that the harasser looks at the speaker and sees only consumption.
It's just a piece of meat.
Right. They see an object meant to be devoured.
Yeah.
By declaring, "I am not your bacon," the speaker is screaming, "I am not here for your consumption. I am not your meal."
Yeah.
And by adding, "not your girl for your children for the making," they're issuing a total rejection of both the sexual and domestic roles that the harasser is attempting to force upon them.
The author really goes for the throat when attacking the harasser's sexual ego directly. There's this one string of words that is so bizarre. Marvel mini orgasm piss.
Yes, it's quite a phrase.
It is such an intentionally gross sequence of imagery.
But it's a brilliant use of grotesque imagery to completely devalue the entitlement of the harasser.
How do you mean?
Well, the author takes this act of public harassment, an act that presumably makes the harasser feel dominant, visible, and powerful, and linguistically reduces it to something pathetic, small, and foul. The words Marvel Mini serve as the ultimate deflation of male bravado within the context of the poem.
The speaker is systematically tearing down every single illusion the harasser holds about themselves.
Brick by brick.
And just when you think the confrontation has reached its peak, the author drops a reveal, a twist that adds an entirely new dimension to the whole interaction.
This is a crucial turning point.
The speaker says, "Honestly, I'm a lesbian and your shit ain't what I want to grin." If you are a listener tracking this intense interaction, how does the sudden revelation force you to reevaluate all the stanzas we just walked through?
It adds a crucial final layer to the speaker's rejection. Up until this line, the text's rejection of the harasser has been rooted in autonomy, personal safety, and basic human dignity. But with the declaration of being a lesbian, the author reveals that the harassment isn't just unwanted. It is fundamentally, almost absurdly misdirected.
Yeah. If you're listening to this on your commute, imagine a salesperson aggressively trying to sell you car insurance, and they're blocking your path, and they're shouting at you, but you don't even possess a driver's license.
That's a great analogy.
It isn't just an annoying interruption. It's completely irrelevant to the reality of who you are.
That captures the essence of it perfectly. The text exposes the harasser as operating under the blind assumption that all female-presenting people in public spaces are inherently available for and interested in male attention.
Which is just wild.
It is. The simple declaration, "I'm a lesbian," shatters that core assumption. Within the world of this poem, it highlights the profound narcissism of the harasser. They are projecting their own desires onto a blank canvas, completely oblivious to the actual complex human beings standing right in front of them.
So what does this all mean for the conclusion of the piece? Because what I love is how the author takes this realization and elevates it from a personal grievance to a universal mandate.
They really scale it up.
They don't just tell the harasser to back off. They declare that this behavior violates a higher law.
The Third Testament.
Yes. The text says, being sexist or homophobic is a sin. According to the Third Testament of, oh, we all cool again. No more shit, just some spins of equality again. A Third Testament They are literally drafting new religious doctrine in the middle of a park.
This raises an important question about how societies codify respect, and the author plays with that concept brilliantly.
Yeah.
The text borrows heavy institutional religious terminology, words like sin and testament,
Yeah.
but applies them in a sarcastic, highly colloquial way.
Right, because, oh, we all cool again. Sounds like something you'd say to smooth things over at a party, not a scripture you would read in a cathedral.
Exactly. But that stark contrast is the entire point the author is making. Historically, the first two testaments, the Old and the New, have often been utilized by various institutions to enforce traditional gender roles and patriarchal structures.
That's true.
By inventing a third testament, the speaker is effectively declaring, those old texts and their outdated rules do not apply to my space. I am writing a new sacred law.
Oh, I love that.
And the core doctrine of this new religion isn't wrapped up in complicated theology. It is just basic, modern respect. It's the sacred law of equality, where sexist or homophobic harassment is quite literally codified as a sin against shared humanity.
They are elevating the demand for basic human decency to the level of divine mandate. It's incredibly clever.
It's very powerful.
And now that the speaker has fully established their true self, their internal biology, their sexuality, their absolute refusal to be treated as consumable meat, and their brand new sacred laws, they move to physically enforce their boundaries in the real world.
Philosophical debate is over.
Exactly.
This is where the text brings us full circle. The conclusion of the piece is where the speaker physically reclaims a territory that was invaded at the very beginning when that invisible bubble was popped.
The author writes, "So get your no-good-looking ass out my park because being disrespectful is not where you motherfucking start." And then, of course, they hit them with the concluding bookend, "So boy, please make me a sandwich."
It's the perfect closing.
But the typography of the word disrespectful is fascinating here. It is written as disrespectful. It stutters on the page. It hisses.
Yes.
When you read it aloud, it forces you to literally spit the word at the harasser.
It forces a physical manifestation of the speaker's disdain. And notice the subtle yet vital shift in ownership within that sentence.
What shift?
The speaker doesn't say get out of the park. They say get out of my park.
Oh, wow. My park.
Right. The space began as a public shared environment, but the harasser's intrusion broke the social contract. By fighting back, by establishing linguistic dominance and enforcing their boundaries, the speaker has claimed total ownership of the space. They are effectively evicting the harasser from their reality.
What an incredible journey this text takes the reader on. We started with a deep, almost sci-fi reflection on the biological lottery of being born into a she body.
Yeah.
We transitioned into the visceral disgust of the pavement, dodging the physical invasions and the animalistic behaviors. We unpacked the dark, simmering threat of violence and explored the psychological mechanism of refusing to be treated as bacon.
And it all culminates in this fierce declaration of identity.
Exactly. The drafting of a third testament of equality and the literal reclaiming of a public park.
Through the specific lens of this author, the text serves as a masterclass in utilizing raw, unfiltered language, not merely to express momentary anger, but to systematically dismantle the logic of the person invading their space.
And that brings us to why this deep dive matters to you, the listener. Because whether you have personally had your invisible bubble popped by this specific kind of street harassment, or whether you've navigated your life without ever having that particular target on your back, this text provides a window into a very real experience.
It really does.
It shows you the sheer exhausting amount of psychological defense required by some just to navigate a world full of unsolicited entitlement.
It asks the listener to deeply consider the weight of everyday language. It highlights how physical presence and casually entitled words impact the safety of shared environments.
It makes you realize that words spoken in public are never just air. They are territorial claims.
Absolutely.
They can be used as weapons to tear someone's boundaries down, or, as this author so vividly demonstrated, they can be used to execute a flawless conversational judo flip and reclaim your power.
Well said.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We spent time discussing this author's invention of a third testament, their unwritten modern rule book where baseline equality is the law and harassment is considered a sin.
Right.
If we as a society are actively trying to build that kind of reality, What other unwritten social contracts do we desperately need to explicitly draft for our shared public spaces? What new rules do we need to collectively agree upon to truly reach that utopia of, oh, we all cool again?
Because ultimately, a society is only as safe and as functional as the unspoken agreements we are willing to uphold with strangers.
The next time you are walking through a park with your headphones on, secure in your own invisible bubble, take a second to look at the people walking past you. Think about what it took for them to keep their own bubbles intact, and ask yourself what kind of space your presence is helping to create. Until next time, stay curious and maybe make your own sandwich.